Okay, so I'm going to talk about something more disturbing than, I don't know, right, disturbing, very personal to me about death. Okay, so I may make a whole lengthy video, but I don't know. We're going to see what this flow is. Okay, it's very difficult for me. Okay, so for those that don't know, I was about 14. I experienced a lot of people walking down the halls. You could hear them crying. People that were dying, you could hear them. I never paid attention. There was a very formal way that I did things at that time. My dad had some military sort of vibe to him, so there was some structure there of sort of, in this sort of kind of patriotic situation. But I grew up very heavily with the church with my mother, or believe in God. So, and always feel empathetic for people, because like God is always watching, or you're supposed to feel empathetic for people. So, I don't, in my opinion, I don't think you could have probably gotten someone better. I know for a solid fact, Richard, John Basile, Jeremy, none of these guys could have been able to deal with, properly behave to very specific people, total strangers, and didn't be able to adapt. But I was thrown right into the pool. Just that's how you're gonna learn how to swim. And so there was a huge buildup. A lot of things happened. I turned 18, and this, when I talk about this, people have no earthly idea the magnitude of what's going on. Because at about 18 years old, right after I got kicked out of my house, and even symptoms before that, I had aplastic anemia, and nobody understood that I was very skinny. This is when I was breaking out on my face. And when I was breaking, that's for those that don't know, my face was always really white and pale, and my hands weren't. That was why. And you can see that in pictures when I was like 16, 17, 18 years old. My face looks much more discomplected than my hands. And that was because I wasn't getting any blood circulation. I was really light complected. So anyway, but you don't know the physical drain and the trauma that does when you have no money. And you're expecting to get money from an old man that they think I'm just trying to steal from him, and I don't. So I get kicked out. It was unbelievable, because this is not how you treat people that are dealing with the sick and dying. When you experience that, when somebody's like being thrown alive in a furnace after doing something like that, the impact of how unfair and how punishment, just, I didn't do anything and you punished me for nothing, you feel. It's not like you just did something good and you just don't randomly from the universe get something that comes into your life. No, people intentionally want to just did harm to me with that very intention and put their own perception, because they knew the business that was going on. And it was just a lot of bad shit. So, I turned 18, and Robert Zarates, he dies in a car wreck with Edward Rangel, who is a identical twin. He gets killed, and people have, I have to separate myself, because I want to give Alicia, especially Alicia Zarates, the credit that she deserves for me not being able to take a discussion, because people have no idea. I've met too many people where they hung around with somebody once a month, and then when you talk to them about how good friends they were or how close their person was they knew, they weren't really that close to them. At the magnitude of how often and how personal, there was a huge interscope of that family that I knew. You don't understand. Like, I was eating at that dinner table, I was boxing, I was spending the night. His dad was like a mentor to me, Senior Zarates. And he would tell me things that were so like to feel empathetic for my father. And he would tell me, and he used to say this all the time, and he said this so many times, and he would be just casually driving, because he was kind of a nifty and always had a tool for everything he needed, very much like my father. He was built like my father. He sort of spoke this formal way like my father did, and he was Mexican. So he knew this very well. So he felt empathetic for my father because he knew he had Alzheimer's. So Robert dies. I'm visiting before his dad dies. His dad is sick, and like it's real. Like he gets in diapers. He's laying in a bed like this, and he has to have his diapers changed. And it starts to affect Robert Zarate, and his dad was sick. I was never informed formally that he had cancer or it was terminal. I just knew he was getting sick, and I knew he was getting sick. I mean, they knew, Robert Zarate knew, as I was even around the situation, that he was sick and dying, and he was having organ failure, stuff in his body, just his organs weren't going to work anymore. So a few months go bypass after he started getting sick, and Robert's killed. But some of the things that I saw, I remember he used to like my mother's menudo, and I'd be sitting at the dinner table because we'd be eating with him, and he couldn't eat his food anymore. And I remember sitting at the dinner table, and it was me and like a couple of us, and he was trying to eat, and he just literally just back and he just started throwing up because he couldn't put the food in his stomach anymore. And he was trying to, he was trying to, take care, but trying to, because you got to understand, I knew his character so well. I had been there so many more times than any of his friends. There was a gap, maybe a year, where I didn't maybe talk to him very much, but I always saw him at school because there was always all these. If I didn't go to his house, I saw him at school. So, and if I didn't see him at school, or if I didn't see him, at his house, then I'd see him hang out with somebody else, and we'd meet up somewhere or some shit like that. But he was my workout buddy. So he ends up dying, and it was just unbelievable at the magnitude because his dad was already dying. Now he finds out his son is dead and gets killed horrifically in a car wreck. And his dad were in the hospital, and me, Chris Dotson, and Daniel Box get called. And I was like, me and Daniel were we were all close, but we all got called to go there, but the extent of how I was kind of like that sort of right-hand man to Robert Zarate, and senior. So we get there, and it was something that is stitched into my mind. It was like his last moments of life left. The way that I made it so personal is the fact that for someone to allow you to go into a room to watch them pass and die and experience that, the family is allowing you to walk in there and experience that. And he wanted that. And I know that sounds really, it sounds maybe kind of haggling to a lot of people, but in some kind of a way, it is a gift because they're allowing you to come into that circle. When a lot of people, it's best to be in the waiting room, not to actually see that or be a part of that. And, besides the professionals, right? The professional nurses and the hospice people, whatever, that deal with that. But I was very young. I was 18 years old, and we were just, it was, I saw Chris and Dana kind of just embrace and give this sort of embracement of human life, of death, and kind of, and like crying. Like we were all fucking crying, like a deep, not just like someone's dying, no, like a fucking deep cry, and, all of us. And it was so hard on us. We didn't say anything, and I thought maybe I was better suited because I had experienced this, and I didn't want to maybe sound so cold, but I wasn't. And Alicia, I guess they had already their crying moment. Mary and Selena there, and I was told right before he walked in that he he was calling, picking up his phone, which was right next to him, and he was randomly calling people, pushing numbers and picking up the phone, looking for his son Robert and trying to talk to him. And it was, when you know somebody that well and you see them in that position and he was deteriorating, I knew he was going to, it was a very slow graduating pain situation. So anyway, he's in and out of the hospital, and there were several times where I drove Robert's dad's truck, and we went to the hospital to visit his dad. And I'd be in the lobby. I never went in there. I didn't go in there whenever Robert was in there, just his junior and his dad. From what I can remember, I remember being in the waiting lobby, and we were walking together. That I remember very vividly. We were walking together to the Parkland Hospital. It was before it was all fancy, and this is like during sort of the ghetto's era of it. And so we end up, and I could see the strain on Robert, what it was doing to him. And, how his behavior was not himself, because his mom already died. There was a lot of stuff that was going on. So Robert dies, we go to the hospital, this stuff happens, we go to it just silence. And so about a couple months later, his dad ends up at the house, and I'm living at Centerpoint Apartments. I am experiencing no money, barely can feed. I'm about to start living on the streets. Like, you don't understand at that moment how intense my emotions were of desperation for my own safety and shelter. It was like I was throwing my last amount of fucking fuel just for the sake of that moment, knowing that for the next 8 months I'm sleeping underneath the bridge. My mother doesn't, not part of my life. This guy, and there was just a lot of stuff that was going on, like her boyfriend and whatever went on in that world. You don't understand the magnitude of really what that feels like until you feel like it's hard to explain what that is, because you have all these ambitions and stuff, and I'm coming for like my last moments of righteousness of life, because I could die next week, and that's the way it's almost kind of I look at it in life. Like, I could die next week or in a month from now, but I was like sort of honoring God, doing this of human life, that we depart into to God and go back to the source. And for those of the archangels, and Robert Zarates was a big Christian, a big church going person, and but there were some words that were shared that that was going on. But I visited him, and I was driving my shittiest car in the world to come visit him, and I could barely had enough gas. My car could barely even make it there. My car, like, when it pulled up, it was like it was firing fucking smoke and shit. I talked about, for those that you could floor the car, I could take off in a 50-yard dash faster. Like, it was fucking, you don't understand the magnitude of what until you experience it. So, but you don't understand. For me, it was, man, I was like, I'm running on fumes so desperately that I have to tell my people at my job who don't want me to skip work, who I'm risking. And at that time, man, like, I had to tell them I could take a day off work, and I thought they were going to fire me. And I straight up told them, I think it was Susie Molina that I said this to, or it was somebody at the time she was working. I said, y'all could, look, I know that I have to let y'all go. I'm going to this funeral, otherwise you can fire me. I don't care anymore. I was very, I had to, my brother, it's like my brother, he just died. And anyway, so I go to Robert's funeral for the next probably 3 months. I probably went there about four or five times maybe, and to the house. And at one moment, we're in the living room, all the lights are turned off, and Robert Senior Zarates is like this, like, like he is dying. Like he is like I thought that maybe he could recover. So I sit next to him. So immediately I know what I have to do. Okay, so the presence of the situation is, you know, I'm not going to make him more depressed. I have to sort of pivot the situation. So I start talking immediately. I tried to, the best thing is to talk about the for the week that I was doing. And it's like, yeah, I just started working at this company, and I was thinking about maybe just finishing up school, and I got some other stuff. So my energy and sort of vocal speaking is going to be followed through, because you got to understand that this individual is so plummeted in a very sick, very weak state than he's usually in, that you want to keep it delicate so that whatever is going on with him is that part of him that he doesn't feel intervened, but has some sort of, direction, because I'm not here to contaminate. There's nothing that I can do, because when he looks at me, he's being reminded of Robert Zarates. And I know that. You don't understand. So I talked to him, and we're watching TV, and I at some point I do remember, and it was crazy, it was wild, because I talked about the dream that Alicia had the same day, but at some moment, and they have cameras of this. I'm pretty sure they have cameras of this inside the house, and you'll see this if you have cameras in there. So I forgot what it was. I was trying to sit next to him, so I have to sort of bulk up this sort of this carry this sort of from what the experience was, right? Every personality, every experiences, you remember what that person was like, to carry that as best as you can, because fun time is over. Okay, this is everything now. And he sits next to him. I'm sitting next to him, and we have conversations, and I try to not bring up his son, but it does become like I maybe jig-jatter a little bit of the conversation, because it's not to focus on the bad, is to focus sort of moving forward a little bit, just step by step, and keep things as casual, because his only son is dead, and there's nothing. This is the worst. Like, he is sick, he's already dying, and now he gets told his son is dead. There's the magnitude of worst you can imagine. So I turned around at some point. We were talking for maybe 30 minutes, and I showed up, and I wanted to give him support. I was going through a huge, you don't even understand what it took for me to actually even get there. I mean, whew, man. So, and I didn't even know when I got there in my car, if my car was actually going to make it back to even my apartment. And I turn around like this. He's on my right. And he's like, I'm not kidding you. He's like this. He's like, yeah. And so we have this conversation. And, one second.